Welcome back. Now, judgment will be handed down on Friday in the Zimbabwe presidential election results court case. Zimbabwe's Emmerson Mnangagwa will find out whether he will retain his title as president. Now, the Constitutional Court reserved judgment in a petition brought by the opposition MDC alliance leader Nelson Chamisa, and who is challenging the outcome of last month's polls. Now, for more on this, I'm joined by Professor David Moore from the University of Johannesburg and our very own eNCA, Aldrin Sampear. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Let me start with you, Aldrin. Just give us a slight recap of what came out in court yesterday.
I think the big question that the court will be sitting with now is that these quote-unquote clerical errors in data capturing were immaterial, as the Electoral Commission has argued, to such a point that it does not warrant these elections being nullified and calling for a rerun of the elections, and whether or not they should uphold the declaration made by the Zimbabwean Electoral Commission. That's the question that the Zimbabwean Constitutional Court is sitting at the moment, and as you've indicated, that judgment is expected on Friday, around about 2 o'clock.
Who mounted a stronger case, in your view?
Well, it's a bit difficult considering that you have this concession that came from the Electoral Commission. However, though, the Electoral Commission, as well as Emmerson Mnangagwa's team, counsel, have been able to poke holes in this case that has been brought by the MDC Alliance. For instance, the issue around the ghost polling station that the MDC Alliance have been alleging that about 5,592 votes came from this polling station in favor of Emmerson Mnangagwa. And the Electoral Commission said, actually, these were not polling stations. These were actually wards in that particular province. The other issue is why did the MDC Alliance not ask for the ballot boxes to be open, because this is an option that's available to them. Why did not ask for their ballot boxes to be open and ask for a recount to verify these claims that they've made? And this is an issue that was also a sticking point for the justices who kept on cross-examining Thabani Mpofu on this issue. And Thabani Mpofu's argument was that the evidence has been doctored. It has been massively doctored, and that's why they are soughting relief at the Constitutional Court and not going through those ballot boxes.
Professor David Moore, let's bring you in. Before we talk about the various scenarios that might play out, given whichever way the verdict goes, talk to us about the neutrality of the justice system in Zimbabwe. Should what will come out of court, or will what comes out of court, be trusted? In particular, I think, by the opposition MDC, who are the applicants here.
Or the people of Zimbabwe.
Or the people of Zimbabwe, yes.
Yeah, thanks for this invitation to come here. I don't think the court is very well trusted. It's appointed with ZANU-PF people. 6 or 7 of them were appointed by Mugabe. Maybe they're G40. Maybe this is their chance to get at Lacoste. A couple of them have been recent appointments. Rita Makaru, I think is how to pronounce her name, she was the chairwoman of ZEC in 2013. That's not a very good record. Ben Hashlawail, I know, was given a farm. How many others have farms? I don't know. How many guys with sunglasses are hanging around their houses now? You know, there were apparently about 200 plainclothes security people inside and outside the court. Did the justices recognize those people? Were those people watching their body language, you know? So there's a whole layer of popular discontent with this constitutional court. It's not quite the court that we have in South Africa. The possibilities arising out of it, I think a lot of the ZEC and Mnangagwa submissions or responses were based on technicalities. You were late. Thabani Mpofu says, well, we gave him to the sheriff didn't get him to you on time. You know, you have copies of these V11s. Well, that's the way the process went. You know, the V11s were posted on the steps, on the outside of the polling booths, and people would get them in that way. And so on. And there was a lot of other incidents that the MDC put in their deposition. But let's say the court is neutral. Let's say the court decides for a rerun. They can, and the court can recount as well. They can ask for a recount, they can ask for a rerun, they can annul the election, have another election completely. Then who would run the election? Has ZEC lost its credibility? I think at one level ZEC has been incompetent. It's not that easy to run an election with nearly 5 million voters in such a short period of time. And the margin of, and remember, ZEC has changed. One of the things that Tabani mentioned was, you've changed your count 3 times already. Once on the CD, once on TV, and then their last count, they say, oh, we're down to 50.6 or 6.9. I was just trying to check, how do you find out the margin of error for a public opinion poll of 4.5 million or 4 million voters? It's probably pretty close to that number. So even then, the results are so subjected to uncertainty. What credibility would this ruling have? So let's say they ask for a recount or a rerun. Okay, people are afraid of a rerun because of what happened in 2008. Many people were killed, many thousands more were coming to the South African embassy, you know, for refuge, for asylum, and they went, Makalima kind of got involved with the churches. Who would run the election? Does ZEC have credibility? Can SADC run an election? Can the AU run an election? Should the UN run an election? There's fantastic Zimbabweans who've been with the UN, Cambodia, and so on. Yeah, well, exactly. So there's a lot of uncertainties here, but I think the biggest thing is MDC supporters would be afraid to go out on the streets because 6 of them were killed on August the 1st.
Aldrin, let's play with this scenario for the time being. So, admissions of data capture errors by the ZEC. You then talk about a margin of victory that was quite narrow, and you now already were talking to us yesterday about that victory having been revised down, right? So let's talk about a likely scenario that the court says there's a new winner. What might be the reaction on the ground, given that you even had police officers that had to be called back from leave ahead of this court case?
Not possible. I don't think that that's possible, that the court will say that there's a new winner, because the thing is that Tabani Mpofu, I believe, just listening to the arguments and the evidence that was given to the court, hasn't been able to prove that Nelson Chamisa has won. And that's the reason that he was saying that even at the ZEC's own collation of the results, in using their own results, their own figures, a runoff is unavoidable. And this is what he says. This is now Tabani Mpofu, which then means that basically what they're calling for is a rerun of the elections, if not the entire elections, at least of the presidential race. But here's something that is quite critical, and this wasn't raised during the court case, and it's something that has been boggling my mind for some time, is that the MDC Alliance has accepted the election results for the local authorities as well as for Parliament. Why do you accept those results, yet you do not accept the results of the presidential race? Why aren't you calling for the entire election to be nullified? Because if you are making some of these arguments of data capture errors, for instance, and you're making the argument that the elections have been rigged, so forth, it must then be that possibly even with the local authority race and the national parliament race as well, that those numbers must have been rigged as well. Because as we stand at the moment, the ZANU-PF stands at around a 2/3 majority. Why not fight that election? Is it really about one man, and that one man being Nelson Chamisa?
Gentlemen, unfortunately, we are out of time. Professor David Moore, thank you very much for coming through, and Aldrin Sampear, you'll continue to give us updates on what is going on in Zimbabwe, particularly ahead of the verdict that is going to come out tomorrow. When we return, we'll bring you the latest on Donald Trump's tweet about land invasions in South Africa. You're watching eNCA now.